At 40, Hannah More thought she had her life perfectly mapped out: a loving son, a steady job, and a home that ran like clockwork. Love, she decided long ago, was a luxury she couldn't afford, not after heartbreak, not after years of raising her child alone. Then she met Dr. Maya Ellis. Brilliant, kind, and impossibly patient, Maya wasn't just another stranger passing through her life. She became a presence Hannah couldn't ignore. Between coughs and coffee dates, late-night texts and quiet moments, Hannah discovered that love didn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes, it arrived softly, insistently, and inescapably. But at 40, with a child depending on her and years of caution etched into her heart, Hannah faced the most terrifying question of all: could she risk everything for the chance at happiness? Hannah More woke before the alarm, the way she always did. The house was still dark, wrapped in that thin, fragile quiet that only existed before the world began asking things of her. For a moment, she lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the distant sound of a car passing somewhere beyond the street. 40. The number settled into her chest the way it always did in the mornings: heavy, familiar, unavoidable. She reached across the bed out of habit and met cold sheets. There hadn't been anyone there for years, yet the instinct lingered, muscle memory from another life. She pushed herself upright and rubbed her eyes, already calculating the day ahead. Lunch to pack. A permission slip she'd forgotten to sign. Emails waiting at work. Dinner that would need to appear somehow, like magic, despite her exhaustion. Motherhood didn't pause for reflection. Down the hall, her son's door was half open. Leo, 10 years old, sprawled diagonally across his bed, one foot kicking the wall, his hair a familiar chaos of curls. Hannah stood there longer than she meant to, watching the steady rise and fall of his chest. Everything she had become had grown around him. She loved him with a fierceness that startled her sometimes, an almost animal instinct to protect, to provide, to never let the world crack him the way it had cracked her. But love like that left little room for anything else. Downstairs, the kettle clicked on. Hannah leaned against the counter, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. The kitchen window reflected her back at her, soft lines around her mouth, faint shadows beneath her eyes, hair pulled into a practical knot. She didn't look unhappy. She just looked unfinished. There had been a time when mornings held possibility. When she chose outfits because someone might notice. When desire lived close to the surface of her skin instead of buried beneath schedules and responsibility. That was before Leo's other mum left. Before Hannah learned how quickly love could fold itself into absence. At 40, she didn't expect anything anymore. Expectation felt dangerous. Expectation led to disappointment, to explanations whispered into the dark, to learning how to cry silently so a child wouldn't hear. The cough started on a Tuesday night. Hannah noticed it the way she noticed everything about Leo, immediately, instinctively, with a tightness in her chest that had nothing to do with logic. It was dry and persistent, cutting through the quiet of bedtime stories and lingering after the light was switched off. By morning, she'd already made the appointment. The GP surgery smelled faintly of disinfectant and old magazines. Hannah filled out the form with practiced efficiency, her handwriting looping and careful. Single parent. Emergency contact, Mum. She hesitated briefly at the box marked other parent, then left it blank. Leo swung his legs from the plastic chair, humming under his breath. "Do I really have to go to school after this?" he asked. "Yes," Hannah said, brushing his hair back. "Being mildly inconvenienced doesn't exempt you from education." He grinned. "Worth a try." When the door opened, Hannah expected someone older. Someone rushed. Someone tired. Instead, a woman stepped into the waiting room with an easy confidence that quieted the space around her. "Leo More?" Her voice was warm, unhurried. Hannah looked up, and for half a second, forgot how to stand. The doctor had kind eyes. Dark, thoughtful, framed by faint lines that suggested smiling more often than not. Her hair was pulled back neatly, but not severely. She wore her authority lightly, like it belonged to her without effort. This way, she said, smiling at Leo. Come on, footballer. Leo straightened. How did you know? Lucky guess, the doctor replied, winking. The consultation room was small but calm. The doctor washed her hands carefully before turning back to them. I'm Dr. Ellis, she said. But you can call me Maya. Hannah swallowed. Hannah. And this is Leo. I know, Maya said gently, glancing at the notes. I've been looking forward to meeting him. The phrase shouldn't have meant anything. It was professional, routine. Still, something shifted. Maya crouched down to Leo's level. So. Tell me about this cough. Leo launched into a detailed explanation, complete with sound effects. Maya listened as if this were the most important conversation she'd had all day, nodding, asking questions, never interrupting. Hannah watched, something loosening in her chest. When Maya finally examined Leo, her hands were steady, warm. She explained everything before she did it, asked permission, treated him like a person rather than a problem to be solved. Lungs sound good, she said. Bit of irritation, nothing serious. Hannah exhaled without realizing she'd been holding her breath. As Maya typed notes into the computer, she glanced up. Single mom? The question was gentle. Open. Yes, Hannah said, bracing for something, judgment, pity, assumption. Hannah looked up, and for half a second, forgot how to stand. The doctor had kind eyes. Dark, thoughtful, framed by faint lines that suggested smiling more often than not. Her hair was pulled back neatly, but not severely. She wore her authority lightly, like it belonged to her without effort. This way, she said, smiling at Leo. Come on, footballer. Leo straightened. How did you know? Lucky guess, the doctor replied, winking. The consultation room was small but calm. The doctor washed her hands carefully before turning back to them. I'm Dr. Ellis, she said. But you can call me Maya. Hannah swallowed. Hannah. And this is Leo. I know, Maya said gently, glancing at the notes. I've been looking forward to meeting him. The phrase shouldn't have meant anything. It was professional, routine. Still, something shifted. Maya crouched down to Leo's level. So. Tell me about this cough. Leo launched into a detailed explanation, complete with sound effects. Maya listened as if this were the most important conversation she'd had all day, nodding, asking questions, never interrupting. Hannah watched, something loosening in her chest. When Maya finally examined Leo, her hands were steady, warm. She explained everything before she did it, asked permission, treated him like a person rather than a problem to be solved. Lungs sound good, she said. Bit of irritation, nothing serious. Hannah exhaled without realizing she'd been holding her breath. As Maya typed notes into the computer, she glanced up. Single mom? The question was gentle. Open. Yes, Hannah said, bracing for something, judgment, pity, assumption. Hannah left the surgery with the prescription in her bag in a strange, unfamiliar warmth in her chest. She told herself it was relief. She didn't yet recognize it as the beginning of something else. The cafe was nearly full, which was unusual for a weekday afternoon. Hannah almost turned around when she saw the line stretching toward the door. She was already running late, her mind ticking through errands and emails she'd postponed. But the rain had started again, thin, persistent, and the idea of driving home without caffeine felt impossible. She stepped inside, shaking water from her coat. It took her a moment to notice the woman standing a few places ahead of her. Maya. Not Dr. Ellis. Just Maya. She was dressed simply, dark jeans, a soft jumper, hair loose around her shoulders. Without the surgery's fluorescent lights and white walls, she looked warmer somehow. More human. Less like someone whose job required holding the weight of other people's fears. Hannah's first instinct was to leave. This was inappropriate. Awkward. A boundary she hadn't even realized existed until now. Then Maya turned. Their eyes met, surprise flickering across Maya's face before softening into a smile that felt unmistakably real. "Hannah," she said, as if she were relieved. "Hi," Hannah replied, her voice sounding steadier than she felt. For a moment, neither of them moved. "I didn't expect to see you here," Maya said. "I could say the same," Hannah answered. "I'm usually at work by now. Or, in my car, questioning my life choices." Maya laughed, a quiet, genuine sound. "Long day?" she asked. "Long decade," Hannah said, then flushed. "Sorry. That came out wrong." "It came out honest," Maya said gently. The line shuffled forward. When Maya reached the counter, she ordered, then turned back to Hannah. "Would you like to sit with me?" she asked, careful. "Only if you're comfortable." Hannah hesitated for less than a second. "Yes," she said. "I'd like that." They found a small table near the window. Outside, rain streaked down the glass, blurring the world into soft shapes and movement. For a few minutes, they talked about nothing important. The weather. The coffee. How busy the cafe had become lately. Then, without either of them noticing when it happened, the conversation deepened. Maya asked about Leo. About school. About how Hannah balanced everything. Hannah surprised herself by answering honestly. "I don't always," she admitted. "Balance, I mean. Some days I feel like I'm just reacting. Putting out small fires. That still counts as moving forward," Maya said. "Especially when someone else depends on you." "And you?" Hannah asked. "You always seem so calm." Maya smiled faintly. "That's the work version of me. What's the real version like?" Maya considered this. "Tired," she said finally. "And trying not to forget who I am outside of being useful." Something passed between them then, a shared recognition. Hannah glanced at the clock, startled by how much time had passed. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "Of course," Maya replied, though her expression suggested she felt the same pull. They stood awkwardly, neither quite ready to leave. "Leo's cough?" Maya asked. "Already better," Hannah said. "Thank you." Maya nodded, then paused. "It was nice to see you." "It was," Hannah agreed. As she walked back to her car, Hannah realized her hands were shaking slightly. She told herself it was just caffeine. She told herself it meant nothing. But that night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, it wasn't the rain she listened to. It was the echo of a quiet laugh and the warmth of being seen, if only for an hour. 40 had a way of showing up uninvited. It appeared in the mirror when Hannah leaned too close to apply mascara, in the ache in her knees after sitting too long on the floor with Leo, in the careful way she planned her weeks so nothing collapsed if she faltered. It also appeared at night. Sleep came in fragments now, short, shallow stretches broken by thought. Lying in bed, Hannah replayed moments she hadn't allowed herself to examine in years. Not because they hurt too much, but because they felt unfinished. Her ex had left quietly. No screaming. No betrayal dramatic enough to justify the fracture. Just a slow withdrawal, like someone packing up emotionally long before they touched a suitcase. "I don't know who I am anymore," she'd said once. Hannah had nodded, understanding too well. Loving someone didn't mean you could save them from themselves. After that, Hannah learned how to be solid. Reliable. Enough. She learned how to stop wanting. Or at least, how to bury it beneath routine. The problem with meeting Maya was that it unearthed something Hannah thought she'd outgrown: curiosity. The soft, dangerous question of what if. At work, she found herself distracted. Catching her reflection in the darkened screen of her computer. Wondering what Maya's life looked like beyond the surgery and the cafe. She scolded herself for it. This wasn't her story anymore. Dating meant time she didn't have. Energy she couldn't spare. Explanations she wasn't ready to give, to Leo, to herself. 40 meant knowing the cost of things. That evening, after dinner and homework, Hannah stood at the sink washing dishes while Leo talked about his day. Mom? Yes? Are you lonely? The plate slipped slightly in her hands. Why would you ask that? Leo shrugged. You're always busy. But you don't have many friends over. Hannah dried her hands slowly. Children had a way of seeing through the careful architecture adults built around themselves. I'm okay, she said, finally. I like our life. Leo studied her for a moment, then nodded. Okay. But later, as she tucked him in, Hannah sat on the edge of his bed longer than usual. After he fell asleep, she stood alone in the hallway, the house breathing quietly around her. She thought of Maya's voice. You don't have to manage everything by yourself. 40 carried independence. Strength. Survival. It also carried fear. And for the first time in years, Hannah wasn't sure which one would win. Maya Ellis had learned early in her career that boundaries weren't walls. They were lines drawn in care, meant to protect, not to isolate. Still, she thought about Hannah more than she should have. It happened in the quiet moments between patients, when she washed her hands and stared at her reflection in the stainless steel sink. In the drive home, when the radio played softly and the city lights blurred past. In the half-second before sleep, when exhaustion loosened her grip on restraint. Hannah hadn't done anything to invite it. She hadn't flirted. She hadn't asked for anything. That, somehow, made it worse. Maya reviewed Leo's chart one afternoon longer than necessary, her finger hovering over the screen. She knew exactly what she needed to do, and exactly why she'd been avoiding it. So she did it. She arranged the transfer quietly, professionally. Another GP in the practice would take over Leo's care. No explanation needed beyond standard procedure. When it was done, Maya felt both lighter and strangely exposed. That evening, she sat alone in her flat, scrolling through her phone without reading anything. Outside, the city hummed with other people's lives. She drafted the message 3 times before sending it. Hi Hannah, this is Maya. I hope it's okay I reached out. We're no longer in a doctor-patient relationship, and I wondered if you might like to get coffee sometime. No pressure at all. She stared at the screen after hitting send, heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. Maya was 42. She'd dated. Loved. Lost. She knew better than to romanticize possibility. Still, when the reply came, she held her breath as she read it. Hi Maya. I think I'd like that. Coffee sounds good. Maya smiled, small, private, real. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to want something without apology. Hannah nearly canceled 3 times. Once when the babysitter texted to say she might be late. Once when Leo complained of a headache that turned out to be nothing. And once when Hannah caught her reflection in the mirror and felt 40 settle heavily across her shoulders. The dress she'd chosen was simple, blue, soft, something she could imagine wearing to a work meeting if she had to. She didn't want to look like she was trying. She didn't want to look like she wasn't. At 7:05, she typed the message with a tight chest. I'm really sorry, tonight's turning into one of those evenings. The reply came almost instantly. That's okay. Truly. We can do another time, or not at all. No expectations. Hannah stared at the words. No expectations. Something in her loosened. The babysitter arrived 10 minutes later, flustered but apologetic. Leo's headache vanished the moment she mentioned takeaway for dinner. Hannah reread Maya's message, then typed again. If you're still free, I'd like to come. The cafe they'd chosen was small and warm, lit with amber lamps and the quiet murmur of conversation. Maya was already there, seated near the window. When she looked up and saw Hannah, her face softened in a way that made Hannah's throat tighten unexpectedly. You made it, Maya said. I almost didn't, Hannah admitted. I'm glad you did, Maya replied, and meant it. They ordered tea instead of wine. It felt right, clear-headed, unhurried. They talked about childhoods. About the strange comfort of routines. About how dating at their age felt less like fireworks and more like weather, subtle, powerful, unpredictable. I don't have much time, Hannah said quietly at one point. My life's full. I'm not looking to take space from you, Maya said. I'm curious about fitting into the margins. Hannah laughed softly. That's an odd thing to say. I'm an odd person, Maya replied. When they stood to leave, the moment lingered. The space between them felt charged, but neither rushed it. Thank you for coming, Maya said. Thank you for understanding, Hannah answered. They didn't touch. They didn't need to. As Hannah drove home, she realized she felt lighter, not because something had happened, but because something had been allowed. Hannah's life moved in rhythms that had nothing to do with romance. Mornings were a practiced choreography of alarms, lunches, reminders, and gentle nagging. Evenings belonged to homework, dinner, and the slow winding down that came with a growing child who still needed reassurance more than he admitted. Maya learned this quickly, not through explanation, but through observation. Their conversations happened in pockets of time. Voice notes sent while Hannah waited in the car outside school. Texts exchanged late at night, after Leo was asleep and the house finally exhaled. Maya never complained when replies came hours later. Instead, she asked about spelling tests. Remembered football practice. Sent messages that didn't demand immediate answers. One evening, after Leo had finally settled following a nightmare, Hannah sank onto the sofa and stared at the blank television screen. She felt wrung out. Maya's message buzzed softly in her hand. How's your night? Hannah stared at it, then surprised herself by telling the truth. Hard. I love him more than anything, but some days I'm so tired I don't know where to put it. The typing dots appeared, disappeared, then returned. You're allowed to be tired. Love doesn't disappear when you admit that. The words hit something tender. Hannah didn't remember deciding to cry. Tears just came, quiet, contained, the way she'd learned to do them. She didn't want sympathy. She wanted permission. Later, when Maya came over for the first time, it wasn't romantic. They sat at the kitchen table drinking tea while Hannah folded laundry. This is real life, Hannah said apologetically. Maya smiled. I know. There was no pressure. No reaching for more than was offered. When Maya left, Hannah leaned against the closed door and let herself breathe. Inviting someone into her life didn't mean dismantling it. It meant letting it be seen. They didn't plan the kiss. If anything, they'd been avoiding it, circling the possibility with the careful awareness of women who knew exactly how much a single moment could change. Maya came over one evening with takeaway balanced in her arms and a tired smile on her face. Leo was at a sleepover, the house unusually still, the quiet pressing in around them. They ate at the kitchen table, shoes kicked off, conversation meandering from work frustrations to small joys neither of them thought to censor anymore. You're quieter tonight, Maya observed. I'm not used to the house being empty, Hannah said. It feels loud. Maya nodded, understanding without needing explanation. After dinner, they stood side by side at the sink, drying dishes. Their hands brushed once. Then again. Neither pulled away. Hannah became acutely aware of the space between them, the way it narrowed not through movement, but through attention. Maya turned first, slowly, giving Hannah time to step back. Is this okay? She asked. The question landed like a gift. Hannah swallowed. Yes. Maya didn't rush. Her hand rested lightly at Hannah's waist, not pulling, not claiming. Just present. The kiss, when it came, was soft. Exploratory. A meeting rather than a taking. Hannah felt it everywhere, chest, stomach, the place just beneath her skin that had been quiet for too long. They pulled back after a moment, foreheads touching. That was, Hannah began. Enough, Maya finished gently. Hannah laughed, breathless. Yes. They didn't go further. They sat on the sofa afterward, knees touching, talking until midnight about things that felt suddenly possible. When Maya left, Hannah stood in the hallway long after the door closed, one hand pressed lightly to her mouth. She wasn't afraid. She was awake. Hannah had always imagined doctors as untouchable, precise, and impossibly busy. Maya had proven her wrong. One Friday, Hannah accepted an invitation she never thought she would, a visit to Maya's world. Not a formal, clinical tour, but an invitation into the rhythm of someone else's life. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fresh coffee, buzzing with controlled chaos. Maya moved through it with a calm certainty, greeting nurses and patients alike. Her smile, always gentle, never seemed forced. She knew who needed reassurance and who needed space, and she navigated both with ease. Hannah followed, clutching a small notebook she had no intention of using. She watched as Maya explained a procedure to a patient, listened patiently to a teenager who was terrified of shots, and reassured an elderly man whose arthritis made every movement painful. "She's amazing," Hannah whispered under her breath, not wanting to distract Maya. "You think so?" Maya asked, glancing back at her. There was no pride in her voice, just quiet acknowledgement. I don't know. Hannah stopped, feeling vulnerable in the sterile hallway, realizing she didn't often allow herself to feel awe for anyone. Maya's gaze softened. It's okay to feel awe. It doesn't make you weak. For a moment, they just stood there, the noise of the hospital fading to background hum. Hannah realized she wasn't just observing. She was learning. Learning how to exist alongside someone whose life was as demanding as hers, someone who still made room for connection. Hannah had always imagined doctors as untouchable, precise, and impossibly busy. Maya had proven her wrong. One Friday, Hannah accepted an invitation she never thought she would, a visit to Maya's world. Not a formal, clinical tour, but an invitation into the rhythm of someone else's life. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and fresh coffee, buzzing with controlled chaos. Maya moved through it with a calm certainty, greeting nurses and patients alike. Her smile, always gentle, never seemed forced. She knew who needed reassurance and who needed space, and she navigated both with ease. Hannah followed, clutching a small notebook she had no intention of using. She watched as Maya explained a procedure to a patient, listened patiently to a teenager who was terrified of shots, and reassured an elderly man whose arthritis made every movement painful. "She's amazing," Hannah whispered under her breath, not wanting to distract Maya. "You think so?" Maya asked, glancing back at her. There was no pride in her voice, just quiet acknowledgement. I don't know. Hannah stopped, feeling vulnerable in the sterile hallway, realizing she didn't often allow herself to feel awe for anyone. Maya's gaze softened. It's okay to feel awe. It doesn't make you weak. For a moment, they just stood there, the noise of the hospital fading to background hum. Hannah realized she wasn't just observing. She was learning. Learning how to exist alongside someone whose life was as demanding as hers, someone who still made room for connection. Hannah sat at her kitchen table late that night, Leo's room finally quiet, the house breathing softly around her. She held a mug of tea that had gone cold long ago, swirling it absent-mindedly while thoughts she hadn't allowed herself in years began to creep forward. She wanted more. The words sounded foreign in her mind, almost dangerous. More than coffee dates. More than small moments of connection. More than someone who showed up without demanding perfection. She wanted weekends with Maya. Quiet evenings together. Laughter that didn't have to be stifled. Possibility that extended beyond the margins of her life. The thought tightened her chest. Wanting was a risky business, especially when she had learned so thoroughly how to survive without it. Wanting could lead to heartbreak, disappointment, and chaos, the kind that children inevitably witnessed. Hannah leaned back, staring at the ceiling. She thought of the nights she'd spent alone, thinking of her ex. The way love had left quietly, leaving empty space where trust had once lived. 40 carried memory like that, sharp, unavoidable, and persistent. And yet, she remembered Maya's hands, the steady calm she had seen in her eyes at the hospital, the soft way she had kissed her. Those small moments whispered of something real, something that didn't demand perfection or completion. But fear clung to her like a shadow. What if she wanted too much? What if Leo resented her for it? What if she was too old to start over? Hannah's fingers tightened around the mug. She had lived her life carefully, building a world around her son, around necessity. Now she was considering opening a door she hadn't touched in decades, allowing someone else to step inside. She breathed in and out slowly, counting. She had taught herself to survive, to carry everything. Now she had to learn something else, to allow. It wasn't easy. It felt vulnerable in ways survival had never been. It felt dangerous, thrilling, and terrifying all at once. And yet, even with fear pressing against her ribs, Hannah knew one thing. She wanted Maya. The acknowledgement made her ache with longing, but it also made her feel alive in a way she hadn't for years. It was the first time she had truly imagined herself in a life that wasn't just about running, fixing, and holding everything together. She closed her eyes and let herself feel the possibility, trembling but unafraid. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, the kind that stretched lazily across the living room, with sunlight slicing through the blinds and dust motes dancing in golden beams. Hannah had just finished tidying the kitchen when Leo plopped down on the sofa beside her, arms folded, brow furrowed. "Mum?" he asked, hesitating. "Yes?" Hannah said, pausing mid-stack of folded laundry. "Is Maya your girlfriend?" His voice was careful, tentative, the kind children use when asking a question that feels big and important. Hannah froze for a heartbeat, caught off guard not by the question, but by the ease with which he asked it. Children, she realized, had an instinct for truth. Pretending was impossible. "Yes," she said finally, softly. "Okay." Leo nodded, as though that answered everything. Then, after a pause, he added, "She makes you smile more." Hannah felt her chest tighten. That simple statement carried no judgment, no jealousy, only observation, acceptance, and a hint of relief that her happiness hadn't gone unnoticed. "I like that," she said, brushing a loose curl from her forehead. "It's important to me that you know I'm happy." Leo grinned, leaning back into the sofa. "I like her." And just like that, a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying lifted. Allowing someone into their life didn't mean replacing the family they already had. It meant expanding it, carefully, deliberately, with honesty at the center. Later that evening, Hannah sat in the quiet house once Leo was asleep. Her thoughts returned to Maya, the gentle, steady presence she had come to rely on, even in small ways. Allowing herself to love again, she realized, wasn't reckless. It was courageous. She whispered into the darkness, as if saying it aloud would make it real. "I'm ready." Hannah had thought she was done with the past. She'd carefully packed it away in the corners of her mind where it couldn't interfere with the life she had built for Leo and herself. But old wounds have a way of speaking quietly, like whispers you think you've forgotten until they rise up in moments you least expect. It was a rainy Wednesday evening. Hannah had just finished tucking Leo into bed after a long day of school, homework, and the endless dance of chores and deadlines. She sank onto the sofa, letting the familiar exhaustion settle in her bones. And then she thought of her ex. Not in a what-if way, there was no longing, no unfinished romance, but in a memory so vivid it hurt. The way they had parted quietly, leaving her to pick up the pieces, leaving Leo behind with only half a family. The way love could leave without notice, without explanation. A wave of panic rose in her chest. What if this, what she was building with Maya, ended the same way? She hadn't even admitted fully to herself how much she wanted more. She hadn't allowed herself to hope. And now, that hope felt like a fragile vase, tremoring on the edge of a table, ready to shatter at the slightest touch. Her phone buzzed. A message from Maya. Thinking of you. Hope you're okay. Hannah stared at it, feeling both warmth and fear. She wanted to reply, to tell Maya everything. But the words stuck in her throat. Fear whispered, don't get attached. Don't risk heartbreak. Don't trust love, it leaves. She typed a short reply instead. Busy night. Talk later. Maya didn't respond again that evening. The silence felt like a warning. Hannah curled herself on the sofa, hugging a pillow to her chest, wondering why letting herself feel something good always invited the ghosts of what had been lost. For days, she found herself withdrawing, hesitating over texts, avoiding the phone when Maya called. She told herself it was temporary, a protective reflex, but inside, she knew she was afraid. Afraid that her heart, already tested and hardened by life, might crack again. And yet, each time she thought of Maya, the fear faltered, replaced by a quiet ache that refused to be ignored. It wasn't just longing. It was recognition. Connection. Possibility. But Hannah knew something important. Fear is persuasive, but love is louder, if you let it speak. She didn't know yet if she was brave enough. Hannah stared at her phone, thumb hovering over the screen. She knew Maya had called, again, but the words she wanted to say refused to form. She hadn't meant to pull away. Not really. Fear had just crept in, like a shadow stretching across a familiar room. The memory of heartbreak, of loss, of being left alone with Leo at 4 o'clock in the morning, was too vivid to ignore. She deleted her last message 3 times before leaving it blank entirely. Maya, meanwhile, had tried to reach her gently. She understood hesitation, she understood fear. But the lack of response hurt more than she expected. It wasn't anger. It wasn't frustration. It was the quiet ache of caring for someone who might not trust themselves to care back. When they finally met, by accident, or fate, depending on how one chose to see it, there was a pause, heavy with unspoken words. The cafe where they'd met for the first coffee felt suddenly smaller, their space between each other wider than it had ever been. Hannah, Maya began carefully. I'm sorry, Hannah said, cutting her off. I shouldn't have. She stopped, frustrated with herself. Her hands fidgeted with the strap of her bag. Maya reached out, just a fraction, letting her hand hover near Hannah's. It's okay, she said softly. I know why. I get it. Hannah's chest tightened. She wanted to reach, to close the distance, but fear still whispered. Better safe than broken. You don't have to, Maya started, then paused, as if deciding whether to retreat or stay. I know, Hannah interrupted again. Her voice cracked slightly. I'm scared. Maya stepped closer, filling the space that fear had created. Scared doesn't mean it's over, she said. Not unless you let it be. And I'm not going anywhere. Hannah looked at her, really looked, at the warmth in her eyes, the steady patience in her stance, the way her presence seemed to insist gently that it was safe to hope again. The almost goodbye hung in the air, unspoken, unresolved. But in that moment, Hannah felt a shift. Fear would always be there, a shadow she couldn't erase, but love, she realized, could be louder if she chose to listen. She swallowed hard, feeling the weight in her chest ease just a little. I don't want to lose this, she whispered. You won't, Maya said, reaching finally to take her hand. Not forceful. Not demanding. Just holding. For the first time in days, Hannah let herself breathe. The almost goodbye became a promise instead, tentative, fragile, but real. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle by the time Hannah pulled up outside Maya's apartment. The streetlights reflected off wet pavement, painting long streaks of gold and silver. Her chest was tight, her hands trembling slightly, but for the first time in days, the tight knot of fear in her stomach was paired with determination. She knocked. Twice. On the third try, Maya opened the door, her expression a mixture of surprise and concern. "Hannah?" she asked softly. I needed to see you," Hannah said, her voice unsteady but firm. "I can't keep letting fear decide what I get to feel. I don't want to lose you, not because I'm scared, but because I care." Maya stepped aside, letting her in without a word. The apartment smelled faintly of vanilla and warm coffee, cozy in a way that immediately softened Hannah's racing thoughts. They sat on the sofa, neither speaking for a moment, letting the quiet stretch comfortably between them. Then Hannah took a deep breath. "I've been scared," she admitted. "Scared of being hurt again. Scared of losing you. Scared of messing everything up. But I've realized something." Maya tilted her head, waiting. "I don't want to let fear run my life anymore. I don't want to hide from what's real." Maya reached for her hand, this time without hesitation. "You don't have to. You don't have to hide. Not from me, not from yourself." Hannah's eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of sadness. They were relief, gratitude, hope. She squeezed Maya's hand. "I choose to stay. With you. With us. I'm ready." Maya's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Then we stay," she said. "Together. Step by step." And just like that, the distance that fear had built dissolved. It didn't vanish entirely, fear is never fully gone, but it became something manageable, something they could face together. That night, they didn't rush into anything. There were no grand declarations or dramatic gestures. Just presence. Just the quiet knowledge that they had chosen each other, and that choice mattered more than any shadow of doubt. For Hannah, 40 had taught her many things: caution, survival, endurance. But that evening, she learned another truth: courage wasn't about absence of fear. It was about moving forward in spite of it. And for the first time in years, Hannah felt the possibility of a life that wasn't just endured, it could be lived. Weeks passed with the quiet rhythm of growing intimacy. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't fast. It was the way fire burns slowly through kindling, warm, steady, and persistent. Hannah noticed it in small moments: Maya leaving a note on the kitchen counter before work, the soft way she adjusted Leo's blanket without being asked, the little jokes shared over morning coffee. Maya noticed it too, the way Hannah hummed while cooking, the careful organization of the week, the gentleness in which she spoke to Leo. She saw the mother first, and the woman Hannah was becoming second, and both were worth caring for. Their evenings together became a sanctuary. They cooked meals side by side, the air filled with laughter and the occasional playful argument about who washed the dishes better. Hannah learned how to let someone else carry part of her world, while Maya learned how to fold her life around another person's needs without losing herself. Physical intimacy was gradual, a conversation of touch rather than a race to desire. Fingers brushed over the edge of a table, a hand resting lightly on a shoulder, a kiss lingering just a second too long. Every touch was meaningful, deliberate, and wholly consensual. One night, after Leo had gone to bed, they sat on the sofa, knees brushing, sharing silence and stories alike. "You know," Hannah said softly, leaning into Maya's shoulder, "I didn't think love could feel like this at 40. Calm, steady, not frantic." Maya smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of Hannah's head. "It's not about age. It's about timing. About choosing when and where and who." Hannah closed her eyes, letting the warmth sink into her chest. She felt safe. Seen. Held. "Thank you," she whispered. "For staying. For everything." "Thank you," Maya replied. "For letting me in." They didn't need grand gestures. They didn't need fireworks. Love existed in the quiet, in the patience, in the choices repeated every day. And for Hannah, that slow fire was stronger than anything she had ever rushed into. Maya didn't move in overnight. She didn't try to take over Hannah's life or routines. Instead, she arrived gently, slipping into their world in ways that felt natural. She picked Leo up from school when Hannah was late. She joined them for pancakes on Saturday mornings. She helped with homework without taking control, cheering quietly when Leo got a problem right. Hannah watched, amazed at how seamlessly someone could fit into a life she had spent years building alone. She realized that love didn't have to erase independence. It could enhance it, make it stronger, more layered. One evening, as they sat on the sofa together, Leo curled between them with a book in his lap. Hannah rested her head on Maya's shoulder and whispered, "I think, this is home." Maya kissed her temple softly. "It's ours." For the first time in years, Hannah felt her heart truly settle. Hannah looked at herself in the mirror one morning, the soft lines of her face no longer a source of anxiety, but a record of survival and growth. She was 40, yes, but not too old for love. Not too old to begin again. She remembered nights spent worrying, mornings spent exhausted, afternoons spent questioning herself. And now, she had something she hadn't expected, a partner who was patient, gentle, and unwavering, a son who was thriving, and a life that was full in a way she had once believed impossible. She smiled, brushing back her hair, feeling a sense of arrival rather than loss. Love at 40 was quieter, yes, but stronger. Earned. Deep-rooted. And she was ready for all of it. It was late evening. Rain tapped softly against the window, and the house hummed with the quiet rhythm of life lived fully. Leo slept upstairs, the only sound his soft breathing through the monitor. Hannah and Maya sat on the sofa, knees touching, hands intertwined. There were no words necessary. The moments they shared weren't about grand gestures or dramatic confessions, they were in the quiet, in the stillness, in showing up for each other day after day. Hannah rested her head on Maya's shoulder, feeling warmth seep into her chest. "You ever think about how we got here?" she asked softly. Maya smiled, brushing hair from Hannah's face. "Every day. And I'm grateful every day. For you. For him. For this." Hannah nodded. "I never thought love could be this steady. But it is. And I like it. I like us." Maya pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Me too. We'll keep choosing each other." Hannah closed her eyes, letting the quiet fold around her. She had survived, she had feared, she had loved, and now she belonged, fully, to a life that was hers and theirs together. The quiet hours were no longer empty. They were theirs. And in those hours, love endured. The morning sun streamed through the living room window, warm and golden. Leo sat cross-legged on the floor, absorbed in a drawing of a spaceship. Maya leaned against the sofa, sipping coffee, her hair catching the light in a way that made Hannah's heart skip. Hannah stood by the kitchen counter, flipping pancakes and humming softly. She paused to glance at them, her son, her partner, her life, and a smile spread across her face. "Mom, can you help me with the rocket's wings?" Leo asked, looking up with a grin. "Of course," Hannah said, setting the spatula down and joining him on the floor. Maya watched for a moment, the quiet love in her eyes making Hannah's chest ache with happiness. She leaned closer to whisper, "You've built something beautiful here." Hannah laughed softly. "We've built it together." The day passed in small, perfect rhythms, lunch shared on the balcony, a spontaneous walk to the park, Leo showing off his new drawings. Later, as twilight fell, they returned home, tired but content, the house humming with their presence. That evening, they sat together on the sofa, feet tangled, fingers intertwined. Leo leaned against Hannah, Maya's hand resting gently on Hannah's shoulder. "Do you ever think about how it all started?" Leo asked, looking up with the innocence only a child can carry. "Sometimes," Hannah said, brushing a strand of hair from his forehead. "And I'm grateful every day." Maya kissed Hannah's temple, soft and deliberate. "We've got years ahead of us, filled with quiet mornings, small adventures, and a lot of love." Hannah rested her head against Maya, exhaling a contented sigh. "I wouldn't change a single thing. Not even the fear, not even the waiting. It led us here." The night settled around them like a soft blanket. Outside, the city lights twinkled, but inside, there was only warmth, laughter, and the quiet certainty of belonging. In their home, full, imperfect, and real, they had discovered the truest kind of love, steady, enduring, and entirely their own. And for Hannah, for Maya, for Leo, that was enough. At 40, Hannah Moore thought she had her life perfectly mapped out: a loving son, a steady job, and a home that ran like clockwork. Love, she decided long ago, was a luxury she couldn't afford, not after heartbreak, not after years of raising her child alone. Then she met Dr. Maya Ellis. Brilliant, kind, and impossibly patient, Maya wasn't just another stranger passing through her life. She became a presence Hannah couldn't ignore. Between coughs and coffee dates, late-night texts and quiet moments, Hannah discovered that love didn't always announce itself with fireworks. Sometimes, it arrived softly, insistently, and inescapably. But at 40, with a child depending on her and years of caution etched into her heart, Hannah faced the most terrifying question of all: could she risk everything for the chance at happiness?